The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers opened with a deep rumbling sound. Captain Lee Tae-ho walked through them with steady steps. His black uniform bore the simple blue Earth symbol on his chest. Behind him walked Ambassador Park So-young and Dr. Kim Jae-won. All three humans looked small in the enormous room filled with alien beings. The chamber stretched high above them like a cathedral. Floating platforms held representatives from dozens of species. Some looked like giant insects with clicking mandibles. Others resembled living crystals that hummed with inner light. A few appeared as floating gas clouds with glowing eyes. At the center of it all sat the High Council of Five, the oldest and most powerful beings in known space. Captain Lee had seen many strange sights in his 20 years of space travel, but this place still made him feel tiny. The walls showed starry maps of the entire galaxy. Red dots marked forbidden zones. Yellow dots showed restricted areas. Green dots represented the approved expansion zones where younger species could build colonies. Earth had too many green dots. Far too many. "The accused will step forward," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Lee walked to the center platform. A beam of light surrounded him, making his skin tingle. Around the chamber, thousands of alien eyes focused on him. He could hear whispers in dozens of languages he did not understand. Representative Vorthak the Eternal rose from his seat. The ancient being looked like a massive tree made of black metal. His voice boomed across the chamber when he spoke. "Captain Lee Tae-ho of the species called humans, you stand accused of the gravest crime against galactic order. Your people have broken the sacred protocols of expansion." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant humming of the crystal beings stopped. Vorthak continued. "The sacred protocols have kept peace in our galaxy for over 10 million years. Every civilized species follows these laws. Rule 1 states that no species may colonize more than 50 worlds within their first 1,000 years of space travel. This rule exists for good reasons. It prevents conflict. It maintains balance. It ensures that resources are shared fairly among all species." Lee listened without changing his expression. He had expected these words. "Yet your species, humans, have violated this sacred law in the most extreme way possible." Vorthak's voice grew louder. "In just 200 years of space travel, humans have established colonies on 847 worlds. This is not a small violation. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate attack on the order that keeps our galaxy peaceful." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some aliens clicked their approval. Others made sounds of disgust. A few species that Lee recognized as recent victims of human expansion made angry noises. Ambassador Park stood up. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "Honored Council, we request permission to present our defense." "There is no defense for such actions," replied Vorthak. "The evidence is clear. Your expansion records show systematic violations across multiple sectors. Your colonies exist in forbidden zones. Your mining operations violate extraction limits. Your terraform projects ignore environmental protocols." "We helped people," Lee said quietly. The chamber erupted in noise. Some aliens shouted in anger. Others made sounds of confusion. Vorthak raised a metal arm for silence. "Did you speak without permission, human?" Lee looked up at the massive being. "Yes, we helped people. That is why we expanded." "Help?" Vorthak's voice dripped with contempt. "You speak of help while you steal worlds from other species. You speak of help while you ignore laws that have kept peace for millions of years." Dr. Kim Jae-won stepped forward. The elderly scientist had spent his life studying alien cultures. "If we may explain the circumstances, there are no circumstances that justify such violations." Vorthak cut him off. "The sacred protocols exist because expansion leads to conflict. When species expand too quickly, they fight over resources. When they take too many worlds, others suffer. The rules limit expansion to prevent wars." Ambassador Park tried again. "Honored Vorthak, If you would examine our colonial records, you would see that human expansion has actually reduced conflicts in our sectors. Impossible, said another council member. This one looked like a giant floating jellyfish with hundreds of tentacles. Rapid expansion always causes instability. Our models prove this beyond doubt. Your models are wrong, Lee said. The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate punishment for the humans. Others called for their expulsion from civilized space. A few younger species remained quiet, but Lee noticed them watching with interest. Vorthak's voice boomed over the noise. Silence. The chamber fell quiet again. Human arrogance knows no bounds. Vorthak continued. You dare to claim that our ancient wisdom is wrong. You dare to suggest that laws tested over millions of years are flawed. This is exactly why your species is dangerous. We are not dangerous, Ambassador Park said firmly. We are different. There is a distinction. Different? The crystal beings began humming again. Different means unpredictable. Unpredictable means dangerous. Dr. Kim pulled out a small device. If we could show you the data from our colonies, we have seen enough data, Vorthak interrupted. 847 illegal colonies, mining operations in 17 forbidden zones, terraform projects on worlds marked as protected. The numbers speak clearly. Lee looked around the chamber. Most of the older species showed obvious anger or disgust. But some of the younger ones looked curious. A few even looked hopeful. What you call violations, we call solutions, Lee said. What you call illegal expansion, we call rescue operations. What you call dangerous, we call necessary. Rescue operations? Vorthak laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You rescue no one, you take worlds for your own benefit. Then let us prove otherwise, Ambassador Park said quickly. Grant us access to the historical records. Let us show the Council exactly what happened on each world we colonized. The records will only confirm your guilt, replied Vorthak. Then, you have nothing to fear from letting us present them, Park countered. Dr. Kim whispered something urgent in Ambassador Park's ear. Her eyes widened slightly. Actually, Dr. Kim said louder, we would like to examine not just our own records, but the complete historical database of the sacred protocols themselves. Vorthak paused. For the first time, the ancient being seemed uncertain. The historical records are not relevant to this trial. If the sacred protocols are as perfect as you claim, Park pressed, then their historical application should only strengthen your case against us. Several younger species began making sounds of agreement. Lee noticed that these were species that had been restricted to very few worlds, despite centuries of space travel. Very well, Vorthak said finally. You may examine the records, but know this, humans. When those records confirm your guilt beyond all doubt, the penalty will be severe. Your species will be restricted to your home system. All your colonies will be evacuated. Earth will be quarantined until you learn to respect galactic law. And if the records show something else? Lee asked. They will not, Vorthak replied with certainty. The sacred protocols have never failed. They have never been wrong. They will prove that your expansion threatens the stability of our galaxy. Ambassador Park bowed slightly. We accept these terms. As the session ended, Lee noticed Dr. Kim's excited expression. Whatever the scientist had discovered in his preliminary research, it was significant. Very significant. The humans were escorted to guest quarters to await access to the records. As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Lee wondered if they had just saved humanity or doomed it. Either way, they would know soon enough. The archive building on Nexus Prime was older than human civilization. Its walls were made of living crystal that glowed softly in the dim light. Ambassador Park So-young walked through the entrance with Dr. Kim Jae-won and Captain Lee Tae-ho behind her. Their footsteps echoed in the vast halls filled with the knowledge of a million worlds. The keeper of records waited for them at the central desk. The ancient being looked like a giant spider made of silver threads. Its 8 legs moved constantly as it sorted through data streams that flowed like water through the air around it. I am Archivist Nethys, the being said through a translation device. I have maintained these records for 40,000 years. I have seen many species come and go. Most learn to respect the wisdom contained here. We respect wisdom, Dr. Kim replied politely. We just want to understand the full history of the sacred protocols. Nethys made a sound like wind chimes. Understanding and acceptance are different things, young human. Your species seems to struggle with acceptance. The keeper led them deeper into the archives. The walls showed moving pictures of galactic history. Stars being born. Worlds being discovered. Species meeting for the first time. Wars ending in peace treaties. The sacred protocols were created 10 million years ago, Nethys explained as they walked. The Elder Council wanted to prevent the Great Wars from happening again. Before the protocols, expansion led to constant conflict. Species fought over every world, every resource, every advantage. They reached a circular room filled with floating data crystals. Each crystal contained the complete history of a different species. Earth's crystal was small and new compared to the ancient ones around it. Here are your records, Nethys said, pointing to a section marked Recent Species. Everything your people have done since first contact is documented here. Every colony, every violation, every ignored warning. Dr. Kim approached the human records carefully. May we also examine the records of other species to understand how the protocols worked for them? If you wish to waste time, Nethys replied. Other species learned to follow the rules. Your people did not. Ambassador Park began studying the earliest human expansion records. She found files about Commander Han Min-soo, who led the first colony ships beyond the approved zones 50 years ago. His personal logs appeared as holographic text in the air. Day 43 of our journey to Kepler 442b. Commander Han's recorded voice spoke. We know this system is outside our approved expansion zone. The Council has marked it as economically non-viable, but our long-range sensors show something the Council missed. The record paused as Park touched a control. What did they miss? She asked the archive system. The hologram shifted to show sensor data from 50 years ago. Kepler 442b had 3 billion inhabitants from a species called the Thylorians. Their world was dying from a solar flare that their technology could not stop. The Council classified the system as non-viable because the Thylorians were not spacefaring. Commander Han's voice continued. But non-spacefaring does not mean non-intelligent. These people needed help. The nearest Council rescue station was 6 months away. We could be there in 3 weeks. Captain Lee watched the records with growing interest. What happened when they arrived? The archive showed Commander Han's colony ship reaching the dying world. Human engineers worked alongside desperate Thylorians to build emergency shelters. Human medical teams treated radiation poisoning. Human transport ships evacuated civilians to safer areas of the planet. We saved 2.8 billion lives, Commander Han's final log entry stated. The Council says we violated expansion protocols. I say we followed a higher law. The law that says intelligent life has value, regardless of which zone it exists in. Dr. Kim was examining older records from different species. Ambassador Park, you need to see this. She moved to where Kim was studying the expansion history of the crystal beings called the Zephirites. According to their records, they had followed the sacred protocols perfectly for their first 1,000 years. 50 worlds exactly. No violations. Perfect compliance. Look at their expansion rate. Kim pointed to a graph. Perfectly linear. 1 new world every 20 years. No deviation. That seems efficient, Park replied. Too efficient, Kim said. Look at the population data. The records showed that Zephyrite population had remained exactly the same for 800 years. No growth, no decline, perfectly stable. That is impossible for a natural population, Kim explained. Living species grow and change. The only way to maintain perfect stability is through strict controls. Park began to understand. You think they were forced to limit their population to fit the expansion rules? Not just them. Kim pulled up records from dozens of other species. Look at this pattern. Every species that follows the sacred protocols perfectly shows the same artificial population control. Captain Lee joined them at the display. What about species that expanded naturally, without the controls? Kim searched the older records. The archives showed many species from the early days of the galaxy. Before the sacred protocols existed, their expansion patterns looked completely different. Look at this. Kim pointed to the records of an ancient species called the Builders. They expanded to over 3,000 worlds in their first millennium. Their population grew naturally. They developed new technologies constantly. They explored, traded, and innovated. What happened to them? Park asked. Kim searched for more. Recent records of the Builders. The archive system made a soft beeping sound. Record sealed, the system announced. Access restricted to High Council only. Why would Builder records be sealed? Lee wondered. Archivist Nethys had been listening quietly. Now the ancient being moved closer with clicking steps. Many old records are sealed, Nethys said carefully. Some knowledge is too dangerous for younger species. Dangerous how? Park asked. Nethys paused for a long moment. There are things in these archives that could upset the stability of current galactic order. Dr. Kim looked up sharply. What kind of things? I have said too much already, Nethys replied. But then the keeper moved closer and lowered its voice. However, if you were to examine the mathematical foundations of the sacred protocols, you might find interesting patterns. Kim immediately began searching for the mathematical models. The archive system provided access to complex equations that governed expansion limits, population controls, and resource allocation. These equations, Kim muttered as he studied them, they are based on assumptions about scarcity. What do you mean? Park asked. The entire system assumes that resources are limited, Kim explained, that worlds are scarce, that growth must be restricted to prevent conflict over limited resources. But that was true 10 million years ago, Lee pointed out. Was it? Kim pulled up galactic survey data. Even 10 million years ago, our galaxy contained over 100 billion habitable worlds. With all the species combined, less than 1% of habitable worlds were ever colonized. The implications hit them all at once. The sacred protocols were designed to limit expansion in a galaxy where expansion was barely needed. The rules created artificial scarcity where none existed naturally. There is more. Kim continued, his excitement growing. Look at the innovation rates. The records showed that technological advancement had slowed dramatically after the sacred protocols were implemented. Species that followed the rules developed new technologies at a fraction of the rate shown by pre-protocol civilizations. The rules do not just limit expansion, Kim realized. They limit growth, innovation, and development. They keep species from reaching their potential. Ambassador Park sat down heavily. So when humans expanded beyond the limits, we started growing at natural rates again, Lee finished. No artificial population controls, no restricted innovation, no arbitrary limits on exploration. They spent the next several hours examining records from human colonies. Every world showed the same pattern: rapid development, growing populations, new technologies, and most importantly, cooperation with local species that the Council had ignored or abandoned. The Thylorians have become one of our strongest allies, Park noted, reading recent reports. Their world is not only saved, but thriving. They have developed new agricultural techniques that feed dozens of other worlds. And the mineral extraction on Kepler 438c, Lee added. Humans and the native rocklings work together now. Production is up 400% compared to Council projections. Dr. Kim was studying the sealed records again. There has to be more. If the sacred protocols are so flawed, why does the Council maintain them so strictly? He tried different search approaches, looking for clues about the early days of galactic government. Finally, he found something unexpected. The original Council records, Kim said slowly, from 10 million years ago. They are not sealed, but they are archived in a different classification system. He accessed the ancient files. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about galactic history. The great wars that supposedly ended with the sacred protocols. Kim read from the files. They were not caused by expansion conflicts. What caused them? Park asked. Kim's voice was quiet when he answered. They were caused by the elder species, trying to prevent younger species from expanding. The wars happened because the old civilizations wanted to mine. The communication screen in their quarters showed 3 different human colonies at once. Ambassador Park So-young sat between Captain Lee Tae-ho and Dr. Kim Jae-won as they prepared to contact their people across the galaxy. They needed proof of what human expansion really meant. Connect us to New Busan first, Park instructed the communication system. The screen shifted to show a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. Governor Lim Soo-jin appeared on the screen, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and calloused hands from years of colony work. Ambassador Park, Governor Lim smiled. We heard about the trial. The whole colony is worried about you. Tell us about your world, Soo-jin, Park said. Everything that happened since we established New Busan. Governor Lim nodded. We arrived here 5 years ago. The council had marked this system as unsuitable for colonization because of the radiation from twin stars. But our scientists found a way to use that radiation for medical purposes. The screen showed hospitals filled with aliens from dozens of different species. Beings that looked like walking trees received treatment alongside crystalline creatures and gas-based life forms. The radiation that made this world dangerous also makes it perfect for healing, Governor Lim explained. We have patients from 17 different species now. We have cured diseases that the council said were impossible to treat. Dr. Kim leaned forward. How many lives have you saved? Over 800,000 in just 5 years. Governor Lim replied. The Corellian plague that was killing millions across 3 sectors? We found a cure using New Busan's unique radiation. The bone rot affecting the crystal beings. Our doctors discovered a treatment that completely stops the disease. Captain? Lee smiled. And what do the other species say about human expansion now? They send us thank you messages every day. Governor Lim laughed. The Corellians have offered to share their entire historical database with us. The crystal beings want to establish permanent medical research partnerships. 3 other species have asked if they can build their own hospitals here. But according to council law, Park said carefully, New Busan should not exist. We built it in a restricted zone. Governor Lim's expression grew serious. If we had followed council law, hundreds of thousands of beings would be dead right now. The nearest approved medical facility was 6 months away by the fastest ships. Patients were dying while waiting for treatment that we could provide in days. The connection ended, and Park immediately called Haven Station. Administrator Kang Yu-na appeared on screen. She was younger than Governor Lim, with short black hair and tired eyes that had seen too much suffering. Administrator Kang, Park, said, Tell us about Haven Station. Kang straightened in her chair. Haven Station exists in what the council calls empty space between approved zones. We built it here because this region has the most natural disasters in known space. Solar, flares, asteroid impacts, planetary volcanic eruptions. The screen showed rescue ships launching from a massive space station. Human crews worked alongside alien teams to evacuate civilians from dying worlds. When the Zephyrite homeworld's sun began expanding unexpectedly, the council said evacuation was impossible. Kang continued. Too far from approved routes. Too expensive, not cost-effective. We evacuated 4 million Zephyrite in 3 weeks. The council must have protested, Lee said. They did. They said we were interfering with natural selection, that some species were meant to die out if they could not save themselves. Kang's voice grew angry. Natural selection does not apply to solar expansion. No species can stop a star from dying. Dr. Kim checked his data pad. What is your rescue record? In 7 years, we have saved 3.2 million beings from natural disasters. Floods on Kepler 452c. Asteroid impacts on the Vegan colonies. Volcanic destruction on New Thessaly. The council had written all of these off as acceptable. Losses.
How do you manage the logistics? Park asked. Rescue operations across multiple sectors? We partner with local species, Kang explained. The Thylorians provide fast scout ships. The Rocklings offer heavy construction equipment. The crystal
beings share their energy technology. Everyone contributes what they do best. The screen showed mixed crews working together during rescue operations. Humans coordinated while aliens provided specialized skills. Species that had never met before the disasters now worked as teams. The interesting thing, Kang added, is that these partnerships continue after the emergencies end. Trade relationships develop. Technology sharing increases. Cultural exchanges grow. Our rescue operations have created more interspecies cooperation than the Council managed in centuries. The final call went to Harmony, the most ambitious human colony. Terraforming Chief Bei Junho appeared on screen. He was an older man with gray hair and soil stains on his clothes from working in the fields. "Chief Bei," Park said, "show us what you have built." The screen displayed an impossible sight. 4 completely different alien species lived together on the same world. In one area, tree-like beings grew in vast forests. In another section, crystalline creatures lived in geometric cities. Gas-based life forms floated through special atmospheric domes, and rock-based aliens built underground cities in the planet's crust. The Council said this was impossible, Chief Bei explained. 4 species with completely different environmental needs cannot share one world. Their terraforming models proved it mathematically. "But you did it anyway," Lee said. "We did it because the mathematics were wrong," Bei replied. The Council's models assumed competition for resources. They assumed each species needed to control territory exclusively. But we started with cooperation. The screen showed integrated cities where different species worked together. Tree beings provided organic materials while crystal beings supplied energy technology. Gas creatures offered atmospheric processing, while rock beings handled mining and construction. Each species contributes their strengths to support the others, Bei continued. The tree beings grow food that nourishes the crystal beings' energy matrices. The crystal beings provide power for the gas beings' atmospheric processors. The gas beings create perfect air mixtures for the rock beings' underground cities. The rock beings mine materials that all the other species need. Dr. Kim studied the environmental data flowing across the screen. "What are your efficiency ratings compared to single-species colonies?" 400% higher food production, 600% more efficient energy use, 300% faster construction rates, and 0 interspecies conflicts, Bei said proudly. "Zero conflicts?" Park asked in surprise. "When everyone depends on everyone else for survival, fighting becomes impossible," Bei explained. "You cannot attack someone whose work keeps you alive. You cannot steal from someone whose success ensures your own success." The screen showed children from all 4 species playing together in shared parks. Young tree beings climbed crystal structures while gas being children floated through the air. Rock being youngsters rolled around while human children ran between them all. "The next generation does not even understand the old divisions," Bei said softly. "To them, diversity is normal. Cooperation is natural. The idea of species living separately seems strange and wasteful." After ending the communication, the 3 humans sat quietly for several minutes. The evidence was overwhelming. Every human colony that violated Council rules had created something better than what existed before. Dr. Kim finally broke the silence. "We are not just defending human expansion. We are defending the right of the galaxy to evolve." "The Council will say these are isolated examples," Park warned. "They will claim that our success is temporary, that conflicts will develop eventually." "Then we show them the mathematics," Lee said. "The actual numbers, the real results." Kim pulled up his analysis of the colony data. Sectors with human colonies show lower conflict rates than sectors under direct Council control. Economic productivity is higher. Technological innovation is faster. Interspecies cooperation is measurably better. "How much better?" Park asked. 30% reduction in conflicts, 50% increase in trade volume, 70% more joint technology projects, and 90% higher satisfaction ratings from all participating species, Kim read from his datapad. Captain Lee stood up and walked to the window overlooking Nexus Prime. The ancient city stretched below them, beautiful and unchanging. It had looked exactly the same for millions of years. "The Council is not evil," Lee said thoughtfully. They genuinely believe their system works. They have maintained peace for 10 million years. But peace is not the same as progress. Park replied. Peace without growth is just controlled stagnation. Dr. Kim joined Lee at the window. The question is whether the galaxy wants to stay safe and unchanging, or become something better and more uncertain. Humanity has already made that choice, Lee said. We chose growth over safety, progress over stability, cooperation over control. Park stood as well. Then we need to show the Council that their choice is not between order and chaos. Their choice is between controlled decline and unlimited growth. Will they listen? Kim wondered. The younger species will, Lee said confidently. They are tired of artificial limits. They want the same opportunities we have taken. Park activated the communication system again. Send a message, Tiao. Security Chief Oh Dong-min moved through the maintenance tunnels beneath Nexus Prime like a shadow. His black infiltration suit made him invisible to most scanning systems. 20 years of military intelligence work had taught him that the most important secrets were always hidden in the places no one thought to look. The tunnels were older than most civilizations. Built by the first Council species, they contained the original data cores that controlled galactic government. Official records were kept in the public archives. But the real records, the ones that showed what actually happened, were stored here in the deep systems. O had been investigating Council security for 3 days while Ambassador Park and the others examined the official archives. His mission was simple: find out why the Council was so desperate to stop human expansion. The official reasons did not match the level of fear he saw in the ancient representatives. His scanner detected a hidden access port behind a maintenance panel. The lock was 10 million years old but still functional. O attached his bypass device and waited while it decoded the ancient security systems. The panel slid open to reveal a data terminal that had not been accessed in thousands of years. O plugged in his portable translator and began downloading files. What he found made him understand everything. Meanwhile, in the restricted section of the public archives, archivist Moon Hee-kyung was having her own discoveries. The young researcher had been assigned to help the humans with their official investigation, but her real job was to monitor them for the Council and report any suspicious activities. Instead, she found herself questioning everything she had been taught. Moon had worked in the archives for 15 years. She believed completely in the sacred protocols and the wisdom of the Council. The system had maintained peace for millions of years. The rules prevented wars and chaos. Order was better than freedom. But the human records were changing her mind. She accessed the sealed files about the species called the Builders. Her security clearance allowed her to read documents that were forbidden to younger species. What she read horrified her. The Builders had been exactly like humans, rapidly expanding, constantly innovating, always helping other species. Their colonies had been centers of trade and cooperation. Their technology had advanced faster than any species in galactic history. The Council had ordered them to stop expanding and follow the sacred protocols. The Builders refused, claiming that their rapid growth benefited everyone in the galaxy, so the Council destroyed them. Not directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they arranged for the Builders' enemies to receive advanced weapons. They redirected trade routes away from Builder worlds. They spread rumors about Builder aggression and militarism. Within 200 years, the advanced and peaceful Builder civilization collapsed into civil war. The survivors eventually agreed to follow the sacred protocols. But by then, their innovative spirit was broken. They became just another obedient species following Council rules. Moon found similar records for dozens of other species. Every rapidly expanding civilization had faced the same choice: submit to the protocol or face mysterious disasters that forced them to comply. The pattern was always the same: economic pressure first. If that failed, political isolation. If that failed, their enemies would suddenly become much stronger and more aggressive. Species learned to follow the rules or they learned to suffer. Moon realized she was looking at 10 million years of systematic oppression disguised as peacekeeping. In the tunnels below, Security Chief O had found the central control systems. For galactic communications, the ancient computers still monitored all interspecies communications. They recorded every diplomatic message, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange. But more importantly, they showed records of messages that had been intercepted and never delivered. Messages that had been altered before being sent. Communications that had been used to create conflicts between species who should have been allies. O discovered that the Council did not just maintain peace. They actively prevented cooperation between younger species. Any alliance that might challenge Council authority was quietly sabotaged. Any technology that might allow species to expand rapidly was suppressed or redirected. The sacred protocols were not rules to prevent war. They were tools to prevent younger species from becoming powerful enough to challenge the older ones. O downloaded everything he could carry and prepared to return to the surface. But as he was leaving, his scanner detected another hidden chamber. This one was marked with symbols he did not recognize. Inside the chamber, he found something that changed his understanding of galactic history completely. The chamber contained the original records of the Great Wars that supposedly ended with the sacred protocols. But these records told a very different story than the official histories. The Great Wars had not been fought between expanding species, fighting over resources. They had been fought between older species trying to maintain control and younger species demanding freedom to grow and explore. The wars ended not because the sacred protocols created peace, but because the older species won. The sacred protocols were the terms of surrender imposed on the defeated younger races. For 10 million years, the galaxy had been living under the conditions of an ancient peace treaty that favored the victors and oppressed the defeated. Every species that joined the galactic community was forced to accept limits that ensured they could never challenge the established order. O sat in the ancient chamber, surrounded by records of systematic oppression, and understood why the Council feared humanity so much. Humans were doing exactly what the defeated species in the Great Wars had tried to do. They were growing and expanding and cooperating without permission from their supposed superiors. They were breaking the terms of a surrender treaty they had never signed. Above ground, Archivist Moon was making her own decision. She could report what she had found to the Council and help maintain the system that had shaped her entire life. Or she could help the humans expose the truth and face the consequences. She chose truth. Moon began copying restricted files onto portable storage devices, not just the records of suppressed species but the communication intercepts, the economic manipulation data, and the political interference documentation. Everything that showed how the Council maintained control. Her actions triggered security, alarms in the deep systems. Council security would respond within minutes. But Moon was not planning to hide. She was planning to run. She grabbed her storage devices and headed for the human quarters as fast as she could move. Security Chief was climbing out of the maintenance tunnels when he saw Council security teams rushing toward the archive building. His military training told him that someone else had been investigating the same secrets he had discovered. He reached the human quarters just as Moon arrived from the opposite direction. Both of them were carrying evidence that could destroy the Council's authority forever. Ambassador Park opened the door to find two people she barely knew, both carrying data storage devices and both looking terrified. "We need to show you something," Moon said quickly. "Everything you suspected about the Council is true, and it is worse than you imagined." O nodded grimly. "The sacred protocols are not laws to maintain peace. They are weapons to maintain control. And any species that refuses to submit faces the same fate as dozens of civilizations before them." Dr. Kim invited them inside while Captain Lee checked the corridor for pursuit. Park sealed the door and activated privacy shields. "Tell us everything," Park said. For the next 2 hours, O and Moon shared their discoveries. The manipulation of galactic communications, the economic warfare against innovative species, the systematic sabotage of interspecies cooperation, the true history of the Great Wars and the surrender treaty that became the sacred protocols. "How many species have they destroyed?" Lee asked quietly. "Not destroyed," Moon corrected. "Controlled, broken, turned into obedient servants who police themselves and each other." O pulled up historical data on his portable device. "Look at Innovation rates across the galaxy. Before the sacred protocols, new technologies appeared constantly. Scientific breakthroughs happened every few years. Cultural development spread rapidly between species. The data showed a steep decline after the protocol were implemented. Innovation had dropped by 90%. Scientific advancement had slowed to a crawl. Cultural exchange had become limited and controlled. The Council has not maintained peace, Dr. Kim realized. They have maintained stagnation. And now humanity is threatening to change everything, Park said. Our rapid expansion shows other species what is possible when you ignore the artificial limits. Moon nodded. 3 species have already petitioned the Council for permission to exceed their colonization limits. 5 others have requested access to human terraforming technologies. The younger races are starting to question why they should accept restrictions that humans ignore freely. That is why they want to quarantine Earth, O added. Not to punish us for breaking rules, but to prevent our example from spreading to others. Captain Lee stood up and walked to their communication console. Then we do not give them that choice. What are you planning? Park asked. We broadcast everything, Lee said firmly. Every piece of evidence? Communications officer Ryu Jae-sung had been waiting for this moment his entire career. His fingers moved across the control panels with practiced precision as he prepared to broadcast the most important message in galactic history. Every human, colony ship, every orbital station, every deep space relay was now connected to his signal. All systems ready, Ryu announced. We can reach every inhabited system in the galaxy within 4 minutes. Ambassador Park So-young stood before the recording device. Behind her, the evidence of 10 million years of Council deception glowed on display screens. Beside her stood Captain Lee Tae-ho, Dr. Kim Jae-won, Security Chief Oh Dong-min, and Archivist Moon Hee-kyung. All of them had risked everything to bring this truth to light. Begin transmission, Park ordered. The recording system activated, and Park began to speak. To all species across the galaxy, this is Ambassador Park So-young of Earth. What you are about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about galactic government, the sacred protocols, and the history of our shared civilization. In the corridor outside, heavy footsteps announced the arrival of Council security. They had perhaps 3 minutes before their door was breached. For 10 million years, you have been told that the sacred protocols exist to maintain peace. You have been told that expansion limits prevent wars. You have been told that older species guide younger ones for everyone's benefit. All of these statements are lies. Park gestured to the evidence displays. The sacred protocols were created not to prevent war, but to institutionalize the victory of ancient species over younger ones. They are the terms of a surrender treaty, imposed on defeated civilizations during the Great Wars. Every species that joins galactic society is forced to accept limits designed to prevent them from ever challenging the established order. The sound of energy cutters came through the door. Council security was trying to break through their barriers. Dr. Kim stepped forward. The mathematical models underlying the sacred protocols are deliberately flawed. They assume scarcity in a galaxy of abundance. They restrict innovation to prevent technological advancement. They limit population growth to prevent species from reaching their potential. On screens across the galaxy, the evidence appeared. Communication intercepts showing Council manipulation. Economic data proving artificial scarcity. Historical records revealing the systematic suppression of innovative civilizations. Every rapidly expanding species in galactic history has faced the same choice, Park continued. Submit to artificial limits or face economic warfare, political isolation, and manufactured conflicts with their neighbors. Dozens of advanced civilizations have been broken this way. The door began to buckle under the assault. Sparks flew from the damaged entry controls. Security Chief O moved to the displays. We have proof that the Council actively prevents cooperation between younger species. They intercept diplomatic communications. They redirect trade routes. They provide weapons to aggressive neighbors of any species that grows too quickly. Moon Hee-kyung added her testimony. As a Council archivist, I have seen the sealed records, the true histories that are hidden from younger species. The Council does not maintain peace. They maintain control through systematic oppression. Captain Lee stepped up to address the camera directly. Humanity stands accused of violating the sacred protocols by expanding to 847 worlds. We are guilty as charged. But we are not guilty of threatening galactic peace. We are guilty of proving that the galaxy can be better than the Council allows. The door exploded inward. Council security forces in heavy armor poured into the room, but they were too late. The message was already broadcasting across the galaxy. Every human colony shows the same results, Park said quickly, as security forces surrounded them. Lower conflict rates, higher cooperation levels, more innovation, better living conditions for all species involved. We offer this evidence not to defend our expansion, but to challenge the entire basis of galactic government. The security commander raised his weapon. End transmission now. The transmission is automatic, Ryu replied calmly. It will continue for another 2 minutes, regardless of what you do to us. Dr. Kim smiled at the camera. To every species watching this broadcast, examine the evidence for yourselves. Compare the mathematical models we present with the ones used to justify your own restrictions. Calculate what your civilization could accomplish if artificial limits were removed. The security commander struck Kim with an energy weapon, but the scientist had finished his statement. The broadcast continued on automated systems. Park faced the camera one last time. The choice is yours, Galaxy. Continue accepting the limitations imposed by ancient powers who fear your potential, or join humanity in proving that cooperation works better than control, that growth serves everyone better than stagnation, and that the universe is abundant enough for all of us to thrive. The transmission ended as security forces shut down their equipment. But across the galaxy, the message had already been received and was being retransmitted by thousands of colonies and stations. In the council chambers, emergency sessions were being called on dozens of worlds. Representatives who had never questioned the sacred protocols were demanding explanations from their superiors. On the crystal world of Zephyr Prime, the governed council was in chaos. Younger Zephyrites were broadcasting their own messages, demanding to know why their population had been artificially controlled for millennia. The revelation that population limits were designed to prevent species growth rather than maintain balance had shattered their trust in galactic authority. On the rock world of Granite Station, the Stone Masters were comparing human expansion data with their own restricted development. The mathematical proof that their mineral extraction limits were artificially low was spreading through their entire civilization. Ancient agreements with the Council were being questioned for the first time in their recorded history, even among the gas beings of Nebula Cluster 7, normally the most compliant of all Council subjects. Younger representatives were demanding access to the sealed historical records. The discovery that their atmospheric processing restrictions had no scientific basis was causing unprecedented political upheaval. Back on Nexus Prime, the human delegation was placed under heavy guard while the Council tried to contain the spreading information. But it was too late. The evidence was spreading faster than they could suppress it. Representative Vorthak the Eternal called an emergency session of the High Council. His ancient metal frame shook with rage as he addressed the assembled representatives. The humans have committed an unforgivable act of terrorism against galactic order, Vorthak declared. They have spread lies and propaganda designed to destabilize our civilization, but for the first time in millions of years, younger species were questioning Council authority directly. Are these claims true? Demanded Representative Theiss of the Serpent Alliance. Did the Council manipulate our trade negotiations with the Mineral Consortium? Show us the sealed records, insisted Representative Korth of the Binary Systems. If there is nothing to hide, there should be no reason to keep them classified. Have our expansion limits been artificially restricted? Asked Representative Vela of the Outer Rim Territories. The human mathematical models suggest our calculations were deliberately flawed. Vorthak raised his arms for silence, but the younger species continued their questions. The careful order of the council chambers was breaking down as species that had never challenged authority began demanding answers. The human evidence must be examined, Vorthak finally admitted, but this examination will be conducted by council authorities, not by individual species acting independently. No, said Representative Theis firmly. We will examine the evidence ourselves. Each species has the right to evaluate claims that affect their fundamental development. Other younger species voiced agreement. For the first time in galactic history, a significant number of council members were openly defying the ancient hierarchy. Vorthak realized that the situation was spiraling beyond council control. The human broadcast had not just presented evidence, it had given younger species permission to question the system that governed their lives. Very well, Vorthak said slowly. All evidence will be made available for independent examination, but the humans will face immediate consequences for their violation of council security protocols. What consequences? Asked Representative Korth. Total quarantine of Earth and all human colonies, Vorthak replied. Immediate cessation of all trade relationships. Complete isolation until they learn to respect galactic authority. Representative This stood up in her serpentine coils. If the human evidence proves accurate, will the Council acknowledge the need for fundamental reforms? The evidence will not prove accurate, Vorthak said with certainty. Human claims are based on emotional appeals rather than logical analysis. But as representatives across the galaxy began their own investigations, many were finding that the human evidence was not just accurate but understated. The Council's manipulation and control were even more extensive than the broadcast had suggested. The galaxy was beginning to understand that the choice was not between order and chaos. The choice was between controlled stagnation and unlimited potential. 3 weeks after the broadcast, the council chambers had become a very different place. Where once ancient representatives sat in undisturbed hierarchy, now younger species demanded equal voices in galactic governance. The careful order that had lasted 10 million years was crumbling. Fleet Admiral Shin Ye-rim arrived at Nexus Prime commanding a task force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Her ships carried crews from 47 different species, all working together under human coordination. The sight of such massive interspecies cooperation sent shockwaves through the remaining council loyalists. Admiral Shin, Representative Vorthak the Eternal, spoke through the communication system. Your fleet presence here constitutes an act of war against galactic authority. No, Representative Vorthak, Admiral Shin replied calmly. Our presence here constitutes an offer of partnership to any species ready to move beyond artificial limitations. The Admiral's flagship docked with Nexus Prime's diplomatic station. But she was not alone. With her came representatives from every species that had joined the new alliance forming around human colonies. They called themselves the Cooperation Council, and they had a very different vision for galactic civilization. In the detention center, Captain Lee Tae-ho and his team were released by guards who could no longer justify holding them. The evidence they had broadcast was being confirmed by independent investigations across the galaxy. The truth was undeniable. Ambassador Park So-young walked into the council chambers flanked by representatives from dozens of species that had never worked together before. The Thylorians who humanity had saved from solar destruction. The Zephirites who had broken free from artificial population controls. The Rocklings who had discovered their mineral extraction could be increased tenfold, without environmental damage. The gas beings who had learned their atmospheric processing restrictions were scientifically meaningless. Honored Council, Park addressed the assembly. We return not as defendants in a trial but as founders of a new model for galactic governance. Vorthak's metal frame creaked with age and rage. You have violated every principle of order and stability. Your actions threaten the very foundation of civilized space. Our actions have proven that your foundations were built on lies, Park replied firmly. The sacred protocols do not maintain peace. They maintain the dominance of ancient species over younger ones. That system ends today. Representative Thys of the Serpent Alliance rose from her coils. The Serpent Worlds have completed our analysis of the human evidence. Every claim has been verified. The Council has systematically manipulated our development for millennia. Representative Korth of the Binary Systems added his voice. The sealed records have been accessed and examined. The Great Wars were not expansion conflicts. They were freedom wars. The sacred protocols are terms of surrender imposed on defeated civilizations. Other younger species voiced similar conclusions. The careful unity of the council was fracturing along lines of age and experience. Older species that had benefited from the system defended it desperately. Younger species that had been restricted by it demanded change. Even if your accusations were true, Vorthak said with growing desperation, the current system maintains stability. Change brings chaos. Order prevents war. Dr. Kim Jae-won stepped forward with his datapad. Representative Vorthak, may I present the comparative analysis of galactic sectors under different governance models? The chamber's display screens lit up with comprehensive data. Sectors governed directly by council authority were compared with sectors where human colonies had introduced cooperative models. Council-governed sectors show this pattern, Dr. Kim continued, highlighting the data. Zero population growth for most species, minimal technological advancement, limited interspecies trade, high levels of economic stagnation. The screens shifted to show human-influenced sectors. Cooperative sectors show exponential population growth where desired by the species involved. Rapid technological development, through shared research, massive increases in trade volume, and most importantly, zero armed conflicts between participating species. Impossible, declared the crystal being representative. Rapid growth always leads to resource conflicts. Only when growth is competitive rather than cooperative, Park explained. When species work together, everyone benefits from expansion. When they compete for artificial scarcity, conflict is inevitable. Fleet Admiral Shin entered the chamber at that moment, her arrival commanding attention from every representative present. She wore the uniform of Earth's Space Forces, but her shoulders carried insignia from 47 different species. I bring greetings from the Cooperation Council, Admiral Shin announced. 63 species have now joined our alliance. Together we govern over 2,000 worlds based on principles of mutual benefit rather than artificial restriction. Vorthak's voice shook with fury. You speak of alliance, but you practice rebellion. You undermine the stability that has prevented galactic war for 10 million years. The stability you describe is not peace, Admiral Shin replied. It is enforced stagnation. True peace comes from cooperation, not control. Representative Theiss addressed the chamber. The Serpent Alliance has voted to withdraw from Council authority and join the Cooperation Council. We refuse to accept artificial limits on our development when natural growth serves our interests better. One by one, younger species announced similar decisions. The Mineral Consortium voted to ignore extraction limits. The agricultural worlds voted to exceed production restrictions. The research colonies voted to share technology freely instead of submitting to council approval processes. You are destroying everything we have built, Vorthak said desperately. Without the sacred protocols, chaos will return. Species will fight over resources. Wars will devastate the galaxy. Captain, Lee stood up slowly. Representative Vorthak, humanity offers you a different choice. Instead of maintaining control through fear, join us in building something better through cooperation. Never, Vorthak replied immediately. The ancient order must be preserved. Then preserve it, Lee said calmly. But preserve it for yourselves. The Cooperation Council will not force any species to join us. We simply offer the opportunity for those who want to grow beyond artificial limits. Dr. Yang Kyung-ho, the young scientist who had developed the new mathematical models, stepped forward with his presentation. I would like to show the Council our projections for galactic development under cooperative governance. The display screens filled with complex calculations and growth models. Under the sacred protocols, galactic civilization will remain essentially unchanged for the next million years. Population stable, technology static, territory fixed. The models shifted to show cooperative development. Under cooperative governance, we project exponential growth in population, technology, and territorial expansion. Within 1,000 years, participating species could colonize the entire galaxy. Within 10,000 years, we could begin expansion to nearby galaxies. Reckless expansion, muttered one of the ancient representatives. Natural growth, Yang corrected. The universe contains billions of galaxies, each with billions of habitable worlds. Artificial scarcity serves no logical purpose in such abundance. Admiral Shin activated her communication device. I am now receiving reports from across the galaxy. 47 more species have requested admission to the Cooperation Council in the past hour. The movement toward freedom is accelerating. Vorthak realized that the situation was beyond control. The careful system of governance that had lasted 10 million years was collapsing in a matter of weeks. If we cannot stop this rebellion, Vorthak said to his fellow ancient representatives, then we must adapt to survive. Representative Theiss heard the admission. Representative Vorthak, are you offering to negotiate reforms to the sacred protocols? I am offering to dissolve them entirely, Vorthak replied, his voice heavy with defeat. If the younger species insist on freedom to expand and develop naturally, then the ancient restrictions no longer serve any purpose. The chamber fell silent. After 10 million years, the sacred protocols were ending not with war or rebellion, but with the simple recognition that they no longer worked. However, Vorthak continued, if the protocols are dissolved, someone must coordinate galactic governance. The ancient species no longer command sufficient respect to maintain order. Ambassador Park understood the implication. You are offering to transfer governmental authority to the Cooperation Council. I am acknowledging reality, Vorthak replied. Authority has already transferred. We simply recognize what has already occurred. Dr. Kim smiled. Then I nominate Ambassador Park So-young as the first coordinator of the Cooperation Council. The ASI nomination was seconded by representatives from dozens of species. Even some of the older civilizations voted in favor, recognizing that cooperation was preferable to chaos. Park stood before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. I accept this responsibility, but not as a ruler. The Cooperation Council will govern through consensus and mutual benefit. No species will be forced to participate. No artificial limits will be imposed. Every civilization will be free to develop according to their own potential. And if conflicts arise, asked a representative from the outer RE.